So I've encountered in a few contexts recently a question about the status of illusion or appearances. And I've dealt with this question in text online or with various seekers in person or orally. But let me explain it here for people who are wondering about the status of illusion or appearances. So conventionally in Hinduism and in Buddhism, perhaps in other Eastern philosophies or mystical philosophies generally, there is the idea of illusion. In Hinduism or Vedanta, this is called Maya. Maya is the appearance of things that are not what they seem to be. And Maya is that which creates the appearance of the world, it creates the appearance of other people, it creates the appearance of thoughts and feelings and emotions, and most importantly, it creates the illusion of an individual self. An individual self which is separate from others, separate from the world, which makes its own decisions, which experiences things, which is in short the ego. So Maya, which is illusion, is highly connected to the idea of, in Hinduism, avidya or ignorance. They're almost the same thing. Ignorance is what creates Maya. Maya is the result of ignorance, you might say. Well, with some caveats, but basically that's very close to being true. So the idea is that Maya in conventional Vedanta is nothing but Brahman, or self. That is, illusion, which seems to be this world of diverse objects, is in fact nothing but the self. Nothing but the pure, unqualified, perfect consciousness. And yet there is this little bit of a contradiction or complication or paradox in that the self doesn't do things. It doesn't create things. It doesn't act in the world. And it doesn't contain parts or differences of the kind that would be a world or illusion. So ultimately, you see, there's another theory which is less talked about, which sort of undergirds or underlies the Maya theory, which is called Ajata, or unborn. And this is the idea that it's not merely that the world, the thoughts, the feelings, that the sense of being an individual person appear to be the case, but are actually not. It's not merely the case that they appear to be appearing, but are actually a sort of pure consciousness self. It's that they can't be said to be appearing at all. That's the idea of Ajata. Nothing created, nothing destroyed. That is to say that ignorance is not only destroyed, Maya is not only destroyed when self-realization occurs, when one looks inward and sees one's own true nature, but that ignorance never existed. It never existed, and therefore realization never existed. And this is connected to the idea that Maya itself doesn't exist. It doesn't even exist as an appearance. Even the idea of it appearing, even that very idea of its appearance is itself an appearance. And that idea is also an appearance. It's appearance all the way down. It's illusion all the way down. It's mistake all the way down. It's misconception all the way down. Another way of putting this is that the idea of appearance, of things being other than what they seem, of objects existing in any capacity whatsoever, is part of a set of what are called mental categories. That is, the mind creates them. It's the mind that creates them, the mind that takes them seriously. They all occur in language, they all occur in symbols, right? All of these things are connected, and they're all connected or sort of based on the idea of a distinction between the I and the not I. That distinction is the ego. that kind of I. The I that is distinct from the not I is the ego, is the egoic I. So all these concepts are based, if they're to be meaningful, are based on the assumption that there is such an actual separate I. But actually, of course, if you examine that I closely, it disappears. And not only does it disappear, but it's proven to be meaningless, to be incoherent, to have never existed. And therefore, the entire house of cards, of concepts, and of symbols, and of categories that are built on it, including the categories of appearance and of event and all of that tumbles down. This is not something that can be proven logically. It's not something which I can argue. It's something which is a kind of way of stating realization. And as such, of course, even this way of stating it is incorrect. In some deep sense, it's incomplete. It too partakes of concepts and of language, right? So what I'm really saying is that what I'm saying is not quite right, necessarily. But it hints at something. It hints at something important that's not quite the same as simply saying that things are other than they appear to be. No, it can't be said that things are at all, that things appear at all, that there is any illusion at all, that there's any ignorance at all, at any time whatsoever, at all. That's the idea of Ajata. Again, it's not something that can be reasoned through logically. It's not something that can be understood by the mind. It seems to be going against our direct evidence of things being here, of something being here, right? But something is also a category. So when the heart of the I is examined, the distinction that drives the recognition of all these objects, of the idea of appearances, that loses its force. It's hollowed out and felt to be meaningless in some sense. So this is sort of the deepest truth, the deepest statable way of talking about the truth. It's not necessarily for everybody because it's extremely confusing for seekers. So this is why Maya theory or illusion theory or appearance theory is used, because it sort of incorporates what people understand to be their usual experience. It doesn't simply deny all that. But the reality is that things can't be said to appear. It doesn't exactly mean that things don't appear, not precisely, but things can't be said to appear. Things can't be thought to appear. Appearance itself is a category in a system that is incoherent and nonsensical if you knock out the ego.